Hey guys, welcome to the UFC betting prediction channel, and this week we'll be talking about the main card of the UFC fight night between Colby, Covington and Tyron Woodley. This card has great fights. I'm really excited about the main event, obviously. Then Cowboy Cerrone, Nico Price is going to be fireworks. Hamza Chimaev is getting his third fight really quickly, and I'm excited to see how he does in there. Johnny Walker, Ryan Spann is going to be fireworks again. Mackenzie Dunn is there. We could probably see a submission finish there. Kevin Holland, Devin Stewart is going to be the card opener. So let's go ahead and start with Kevin Holland versus Devin Stewart. Holland is the rangier guy. He's taller. He's 6'3". He doesn't cut a lot of weight. He fights extremely calmly and has a great gas tank. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He's looked really good standing up and on the ground. However, sometimes he kind of loses focus and lets the fight play out as his opponents want it. We don't have any evidence in case that has completely changed or not, but in the last 2 fights, he's definitely looked better and ended the fight with finishes. He looked really loose in those fights. Kevin Holland is an extremely spontaneous guy. He likes to engage the crowds, talk to the commentators, even mouth his opponents in a playful banter. During the fight, as the fight's going on. You got to check it out. It's absolutely hilarious, especially the fight against Buckley. This kind of spontaneity translates into him being okay with wherever the fight's going on, and he has shown signs that even though he's really good in transitions and creating scrambles, he doesn't want to hold the position. And that was evident in the mushard fight. So in case the fight goes to the ground with Devin Stewart, he might want to keep that in mind. There are some questions regarding his decisions in the grappling exchanges that I was talking about, but he seems to have gotten that under control. We'll see how this fight plays out, considering the fact that Devin Stewart is probably going to keep the fight on the feet, trying to knock Holland out. Holland showed tremendous control of distance, rolling with punches, and brilliant head movement to escape punches, even body punches with Buckley. And I think that will be the key for his fight for his fight with Devin Stewart. Now, Devin Stewart is also coming in for this fight with 4-1 record in the last 5 fights with 3 consecutive wins. Devin Stewart started training full-time after his Shabazian fight, in which he looked fairly gassed. And we've seen that he's shown improvement since the Bevan Lewis fight. Now, talking about Bevan Lewis fight, he's got thunderous leg kicks. Devin Stewart, that is. He dropped Bevan Lewis at least 3 times in the first round. Devin Stewart is usually a fairly low output fighter, except for the small bursts where he puts in a lot of power in his shots. And you can probably see that with his Tyron Woodley kind of build. He actually looks like Tyron Woodley, I feel. Anyway, Devin Stewart has nice knees and solid elbows in the clinch. He's shown improved takedown defense, especially in the clinch. He has been developing grappling arsenal, but still is a fairly one-dimensional fighter as compared to Kevin Holland. Going for takedowns for Stewart will sap his energy, and we know that Stewart has gone a little tired as the fights have progressed. So, summarizing the whole fight, Holland definitely has more tools than Stewart to win this fight. He's elusive, rangy, and has crisp striking. I watched Holland's last fight against Buckley, who has a similar build like Stewart, to gain more insight on how this fight might play out. Devin Stewart will have to manage his energy and attack in bursts. He totally has the power to knock out most middleweights, but I don't think he'll be able to catch Kevin Holland clean, and he will outwork Stewart for a late finish or a decision. So the next fight is between Randa Markos and Mackenzie Dunn. Let's talk about Markos first. She's coming into this fight with alternating wins and losses in her last 4 fights, and she had a loss in her last fight against Amanda Ribas. Markos opened up with a really low stance in the fight, she thinks there's a threat of takedown, and she's expected to be in that stance, being wary of Dunn's shots. Her strike attacks are somewhat muted when she opens up in that stance, and that we need to keep in mind. Marcos was pushed back to the cage with Gadelha, and I see the fight with Dunn proceeding in a similar manner, where Randa will be pushed against the cage and Mackenzie will try to take her down closer to the cage. Marcos didn't even attempt a single takedown against Claudia Gadelha, who has a good jiu-jitsu game. So I think for this fight, she might not even try for takedown, considering how high level Mackenzie Dern's ground game is. Marcos has problems against two kind of opponents. One who have a great stand-up and great wrestling to thwart her takedowns, and she gets beaten in the stand-up, and which happened somewhat in the Claudia Gadelha fight. And if she happens to fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk, that would be the scenario. The second type of opponents that she has problems with, who have decent stand-up that they can hang with Marcos on the feet, but have better jiu-jitsu game than Randa Marcos. And Mackenzie Dern definitely falls in that category. If you have to think about another fighter who would be in this category, it'd probably be Jessica Andrade, Virna Jandiroba. So now talking about Dunn. Dunn is 3-1 in the UFC so far, with much less MMA experience than Marcos, but has a lot of competition experience in elite level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, and is coming off of a quick submission win over Hannah Cyphers. Dunn has looked in trouble when she hasn't been able to complete her takedowns. She's faced and expected to keep having problems with such opponents as she did with Ashley Yoder and Amanda Ribas. Dunn's jiu-jitsu game is second to none in the strawweight division, and I don't think anyone, including Randa Marcos, would want to take her down. Dunn walks into punches with her head held high, but she has a good chin, and even though she was knocked down by Ashley Yoder, she got back up pretty quickly, and I think she will be able to take Randa Marcos's punches fairly easily. Now, in summary, this fight is going to come down to the same thing with pretty much every Mackenzie Dunn fight. Can Mackenzie Dunn take her opponent down? If yes, it is going to be a sad night for Marcos. On the feet, I give the slightest edge to Marcos in terms of the variety of strikes she has, but I give the power advantage to Mackenzie Dunn. However, Marcos gets her takedowns better when she's moving forward and not scared of her opponent's takedown. This will not be the case with Mackenzie Dunn, and her strikes will be very measured to avoid overextending so that Mackenzie Dunn couldn't take her down. So, I believe Mackenzie will find at least one opportunity to take the fight to the ground when Marcos decides to let it go or charge on Mackenzie. My prediction, I see this going to Dunn by a decision if the fight does not hit the ground. If the fight hits the ground, I see Dunn by submission. Now, this is a fun fight. Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann. Let's talk about Walker first. So, if you want to design a perfect fighter in the light heavyweight division based on size, athleticism, quickness, precision, power, you'd probably come to Johnny Walker as your ultimate guy. The guy stands at 6'6", 82-inch reach, extremely athletic, muscled, and he has power, precision, and speed, everything. Well, he's coming off of 2 consecutive losses after 3 highlight reel knockouts of Khalil Roundtree, Justin Ledet, and Misha Serkinov. Then he ran into Corey Anderson. And that's when it started going wrong for Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker throws a lot of fakes, twitches. He twitches his hips, elbows, waist, and of course his hands. His attacks and attacking accuracy is really good. If you saw the deadly elbows in the clinch that he landed on Khalil Roundtree, you'll know what I'm talking about. He has attacks like great hook kicks and followed up with a spinning back fist to knock Justin Ledet out. Similarly, in Misha Serkinov fight, he went up with a flying knee and cleaned him up. Well, what got exposed in the Corey fight was his pretty much non-existent defense. Now, Corey wasn't tentative with him and met him in the middle and managed to hit him clean multiple times. He pushed the action to Johnny Walker, and Johnny Walker didn't have the time to time his strikes to land. And we saw the same thing in the Krylov fight, but in a different way. Krylov displayed chain wrestling to take Johnny Walker down. The first takedown came after over 2 minutes of back and forth wrestling, but the subsequent takedowns came much easier. That tells me that Johnny Walker's gas tank depletes fairly quickly when he gets into wrestling exchanges. I was hoping in Johnny Walker's last fight against Krylov that he would have learned from his mistakes and would be protecting himself better on the feet. But his hands were down and he got caught with really good punches. And as I said, the two opponents that beat him did it with pressure. Grappling in the first round sapped Johnny Walker's gas tank, and he totally looked dejected in that fight. Now, his opponent, Ryan Spann. Spann is undefeated in the UFC and had a good run. Looked really good against Little Nog and Devin Clark. And he looked good initially with Sam Alvey before Sam Alvey kind of came back in the end, but it was too late for Alvey, and showed a little weakness in that decision win. So that's something that I took note of. Spann physically matches Walker really well. He's pretty much the same height and same reach. He has a really good jab, utilizes it really well. He has a fast straight right and a very good uppercut. If you know what I'm talking about, when he hits you with a right straight and gets you hurt, he just clamps up on a killer guillotine choke, and he's choked out a couple of opponents with that particular technique already. And with Walker being susceptible to overhand rights and straight rights, I think that will be a strike that we have to watch closely. Spann looked a little gassed at the end of round one against Henrique, but Henrique pretty much gifted him that fight. Then Ryan Spann has improved constantly and has looked very calm in the octagon, even against big names such as Little Nog. Interestingly, Spann attempted to take Clark down when Clark is a really good wrestler. Makes me feel that he might try takedowns with Johnny Walker as well. He gets tired and his energy gets sapped by those takedowns, so it's interesting to see how the fight will play out. Well, in summary, Spann's best chance to victory is taking Walker down often and early, and when Walker is tired, then try mixing strikes with takedowns to keep him guessing. That's exactly how Nikita Krylov did, with more of a wrestling dominant attack. However, Spann's cardio isn't that great either, and going for takedowns constantly will sap him. Spann also doesn't chain his takedowns like Krylov did, so I don't know how successful will he be in getting those takedowns, especially earlier in the round. When talking about Walker, he definitely has more speed, more power, more pop on his shots, and he can land the fight-ending blow quick. However, his striking defense is way lower than Spann, and he just puts his hands out, try to defend, and he's really susceptible to hooks on the top and overhand right from Spann, and it's kind of hard to bet on Walker, knowing the fact that there's this clear-cut path for Spann to, either knock him out. Now, talking about a little bit about Walker's gym selection. He switches camp for pretty much every fight. For the last fight against Krylov, he trained with Faraz Zahabi in Montreal. And for this one, he's training in Ireland with John Kavanagh. Now, it could be a good move for him, but considering the fact that Faraz Zahabi is also a good strategist, it did not reflect in Johnny Walker's performance and did not give me a confidence that he will be improving this time either from a strategic point of view. Overall, I feel this is an extremely risky bet because Johnny Walker has the power, but he has a bad defense and he can get knocked out, and Ryan Spann also has power. So in this fight, I'm willing to bet on the underdog, considering the Walker's striking defense is pretty much non-existent. So next one is Hamza Chimaev versus Gerald Meerschaert. So talking about Chimaev first, he's probably the hottest community in the MMA world who fought 2 times in a space of 10 days to make a UFC record. He landed over 180 strikes and took a total of 2 in those 2 fights at 2 different weight classes. Now let that sink in. He's now double booked for a fight against Meerschaert this week and then fighting Maya in Abu Dhabi. So you can see UFC has a lot of confidence in this guy, and probably rightfully so. Chimaev has a great grappling technique. His grappling reminds me of Khabib, where he deploys the use of Dagestani handcuffs, and he kind of takes his feet around the legs of his opponent to prevent the opponent from slipping away. McGregor calls it the mermaid move, but it is extremely effective. Chimaev puts his weight on his opponents while he wrestles next to the cage to tire them out even faster. He seems to have the fight IQ, and he takes his opponent down next to his cornerman, where he receives his instructions loud and clear. His frame is perfect, especially for the welterweight division, with 6'2" height and a 75-inch reach. Even at middleweight, his technique and high pace are expected to give him the edge in the grappling department against pretty much all the fighters. His stand-up is yet to be tested in the UFC, but considering the fact that he trains out of All-Star MMA gym in Sweden, he probably gets plenty of good sparring sessions and coaches who are well versed in kickboxing and striking in general. Now coming to Meerschaert. Meerschaert is coming off of a brutal first-round KO by Ian Heinisch, and he is 2 wins and 4 losses in his last 6 fights. The 2 victories he had in this time span were through submissions. So Meerschaert is primarily a grappler who uses his striking to set up his jiu-jitsu game. He has good ground game from both top and bottom. Meerschaert has decent all-round striking, but his best strike, I would say, is the body kick. And if you're fighting against orthodox fighter like Chimaev, you can land it in the liver area really hard. Meerschaert has struggled against really good strikers who are hard to take down. 2 of the examples being Thiago Santos and Ian Heinisch. Meerschaert's jiu-jitsu is good, but it is not about maintaining position or control. It's about catching people in transitions, and that is not the type of fight that Chimaev will offer him. Also, in this fight Meerschaert's fight with Kevin Holland, which was essentially a grappling match with MMA gloves, Meerschaert was exhausted by the middle of the 2nd round, and that tells me that Chimaev can totally tire him out with his grappling heavy, weight heavy game. And I don't think Meerschaert will be fresh after the first 2 rounds. So to conclude, the fight between Hermansson and Meerschaert provided me a good insight about how this fight might go. Hermansson has good striking, but killer top control, which is very similar to Chimaev. I would say Chimaev has even higher degree of wrestling, and he maintains control even better than Hermansson, using that Dagestani handcuff to make sure that your opponent doesn't slip away. Mushard likes flowing jiu-jitsu with a lot of transitions, and Chimaev is not going to play that game with him. I expect this fight to go to the ground simply because Chimaev will want to prove that he can beat a bigger ground specialist in the same way that he beat his other two opponents, who are mainly strikers. So, my prediction, Chimaev by finish in the second or the third round. So the next fight is between Cerrone and Nico Price, and this is the co-main event. So Cerrone is probably in one of his worst stretches in his career, with the last performance being a close decision against Anthony Pettis. He ended up getting a loss, but I thought he marginally won the fight. Before that, he was annihilated by McGregor in 40 seconds, right after getting knocked out by Gaethje in the first round. So Cerrone has only been beaten by the fighters who were champions or who fought for the championship. Examples are Tony Ferguson, McGregor, Pettis, Till, Masvidal, Gaethje, RDA, Leon Edwards. I mean, you can totally make a case that Leon Edwards could fight for the title. He has actually, Donald Cerrone that is, found a way through most up-and-comers that didn't get a title shot. Some examples being Alex Hernandez, Matt Brown, Rick Story, Yancy Medeiros, Ala Quinta. So not making a case of MMA math, but something to keep in mind, which kind of strengthens the Cerrone bet, because we need to ask our questions. Is Nico championship material, especially considering the welterweight division now? The answer probably is no. So technique for technique, Cowboy has fair edge in punching, kicking, wrestling, combinations, and even the clinch game. However, Cerrone's mindset has often been the key to him winning or not. A weakness that I saw in Cerrone's game in the Gaethje fight was that he was a little slow to move out of the pocket after throwing his punches, and I was countered almost every single time. Nico will be the better man. Nico will be the bigger man with longer reach, and not getting out of the pocket quickly enough will not be wise for Cerrone. Cowboy's combinations are legendary. Once he gets set in the fight and his opponents are allowing him to settle in his game where he can pick and choose his shots, Cowboy is a long night for anyone. Now, none of the fighters who have beaten him have allowed Cowboy to settle in his rhythm. On the contrary, the two fighters who have a pressure game and Cowboy was able to beat them were Iaquinta and Alex Hernandez, but they suffer from a fair bit of reach and height disadvantage. Now, coming to Nico Price. Price is coming off of a crazy fight with Vicente Luque, back and forth fight where Price lost by a TKO doctor stoppage. That said, most of Nico Price's fights are crazy, win or lose. He's an entertaining fighter. He has been alternating wins and losses in his last 5 fights. He's given some takedowns fairly easily. He has a 61% takedown defense, and I think Cowboy will be able to take him down should he choose to. He's conceded takedowns against Jeff Neal, Tim Means, Randy Brown, even though none of them have been able to take Nico down more than twice in the fight, but something to take note of. Nico fights with lunging shots that kind of accentuates his reach. This will probably be the biggest weapon for Nico against Cerrone, where Cerrone starts slow and he can be reached, or Nico can explode to hit Cerrone, and Nico packs a lot of power, so that could be dangerous for Cerrone if he's not really careful. I also talked about how Cerrone stays in the pocket for a second longer, and that could be, and he could be clipped by a haymaker that Nico might throw. Nico Price's finishes need a special mention because they are often extremely unconventional. He got 2 of his UFC knockouts from the bottom, one through an up kick and second through hammer fists, while Randy Brown was kind of transitioning from his knees to get up. It was absolutely crazy. Now, in order to summarize this fight, I believe that this fight will be fun and is not expected to go to the distance. The longer the fight goes, the better it is for Cowboy, as he has the skills and technique to beat Nico Price, and he kind of settles in a fight better as it goes longer. An important aspect is the mindset that we talked about, mindset of Cerrone. He either comes in totally dialed in and looks phenomenal, or he looks very ordinary. He looked phenomenal in the fight against Alex Hernandez, in the fight against Ala Quinta, and looked completely horrible in McGregor fight, the Rafael dos Anjos fight, and a bunch of others. So coming in this fight, with 0-4 record, Cowboy would be itching to get into the win column, but Nico Price is a game opponent who has vile striking, who accentuates his reads with lunging motions. Now, Cowboy is notorious for starting slow, and that's where Price can capitalize. I see Price by TKO in this one. Main event, guys. This is Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. Now, Colby is coming after his first loss in about 7 fights. A failed bid to capture the welterweight crown. And it was a close fight even after Usman broke Colby's jaw in the 3rd round. He came back to win the 4th round. The most important strike, apart from the punches to the face that broke his jaw, were Usman's steep kick that took some of the cardio from Covington. But Covington's cardio is pretty much legendary. He has a simple philosophy. He's like, I can outwork you and you can't do shit about it. He chains wrestling attacks, leans on the opponents in the clinch and takedown situations, and make their opponent work and tire themselves out. He mixes striking with wrestling and always keeps the opponent guessing. If you saw the Robbie Lawler fight, that was the perfect example. Robbie couldn't get a chance to hit Tyron Woodley, hit Colby Covington properly. That was because Colby was always attacking and changing the line of attack. His transitions are very unexpected. He'd leave control, start punching and elbowing when the opponent starts defending the strike. He'll then go for a quick double and take it to the ground. Then he lets you up and spend that energy just to repeat all these striking and taking down and eventually eating up his opponent's energy bar. Now, talking about Tyron Woodley. Now, Tyron Woodley is coming into this fight having lost all the 10 rounds of his last 2 fights. He lost his title in the process, and his stock value has taken a serious hit. And you can tell that by looking at the odds, which are close to minus 350, 400 for Colby Covington, which is like almost 4-1 favorite. There is one commonality between the opponents that Tyron Woodley has beaten. They are either really good grapplers or wrestlers, or they're really good strikers. So Woodley has crisp striking, precise striking, and he also has the wrestling to thwart takedowns. But when an opponent mixes the two together, that's when Woodley struggles, and especially if their output is high. He encountered that person in Usman, and we know what happened. Similarly, with Gilbert Burns, he had the same problem. His grappling is great, his striking was good, and he was able to take Woodley down and keep him guessing as to what he's going to do. Where Woodley did well was his fights against Maia, Josh Koscheck, where they were grapplers, but their striking skills wasn't up to the mark. Or fights like Till, Wonderboy, Jay Heron, and Robbie Lawler, where they were just typically strikers and not grapplers as such. So we definitely see a pattern, and Colby fits into the Usman Burns mold perfectly, and that could be problematic for Tyron Woodley. Woodley needs time and space to set up his precision striking, but Colby surrounds you with volume, constantly throws you off of your game, and your rhythm is completely off, makes you frustrated. And Woodley is probably going to get frustrated if he cannot get the killing shot really early. Woodley started really aggressively against Still, doing his back shuffle and then rushed forward with the barrage. I think Woodley will probably open up with an all-out attack just because he's been accused of being gun-shy in the last 2 fights. So he probably would be overcompensating. So Colby need to be a little careful because Woodley has fight-ending power, no matter what you say based on the last 2 fights. Now, in summary, Colby will be looking to mix his takedowns and his high-volume striking often and early, whereas Tyron might come full swinging for the fences from the beginning to KO Covington to break the horrible pattern of losses he's had. He would also have to keep in mind that he needs to conserve his energy because Covington's energy bar is going nowhere. Colby is coming in at minus 400, which I think is a little steep, but with the fighting style that Covington has, and that kind of resembles and mimics the opponents who've beaten Tyron comprehensively. So for me, it's going to be Covington, but at minus 400, I'd probably put him in 1 or 2 of my parlays. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please share, subscribe, and like. And I will see you next Thursday. Thanks.